Oh wait, finally I get to talk about my home state, Massachusetts. So you know how it works. I collect scary places from all across one particular state, that being Massachusetts here. They each have to be 10 locations, and so here are the ones I collect. You may be familiar with them or not, although there is one certain town that's a bunch of hocus pocus. We can't forget to talk about that, or the local axe house. But I definitely wanted to at least talk about one location, maybe two you'll see, or three. That's a local location in my city I currently and grew up in as well. I'm keeping up with what I said in the Connecticut list, but let's not wait and talk about it. Here are the top 10 scary places of Massachusetts. Number 1, Metropolitan State Hospital, Waltham. Now, at this point, we know hospitals can be haunted and a common place for these dark events to take place, in which it's meant to be a place for healing and caring, are mental asylums. There are a lot of mental asylums with dark histories in Massachusetts, since this is the state where the first asylum was built and such. But for one mental hospital for hauntings, we look to the Metropolitan State Hospital, whose facilities extend across the city and towns of Waltham, Lexington, and Belmont. Metropolitan State was founded in 1927 and was ultimately closed in 1992 for cost-cutting reasons. The hospital was designed in accordance with the Kirkbride Plan. This was an avant-garde form of design engineered to heal the mentally ill, though the use of circulating air and natural light, although this failed to get that effect. There is evidence to this because a murder in 1978 happened there. Anne Marie Davy, a patient of the hospital, got killed by another patient. The story that surrounds the hospital is very tragic. The Department of Mental Health was neglectful when investigating the case, and the missing person report lacked a proper documentation. Her case was closed 1 year later, and it's apparent her body parts were missing until they were found in 1980. The murder of Anne Marie Davy is one of the scary parts about the whole hospital. The eerie remains of the hospital are now one of the inspirations for American Horror Story, Asylum. Number 2, USS Salem, Quincy. This place is on the seas. That's because she's a big warship from World War II, but never saw actual use, and now it's a museum. This CA-139, called USS Salem, is scary not because of its backstory connected to the war, but actually its hauntings. It may have not been used in the war, but it did its fair share of deaths. One of them, which is the most gruesome, it took place in the Mediterranean when the ship arrived on the western shore of Greece to provide relief to victims of the 1953 Ionian earthquake. Victims were taken aboard to get medical care, but unfortunately people did perish during treatment, and it's said the victims who died in that disaster and were brought on the ship wander as spirits. Number 3. Bridgewater Triangle, Southeastern Massachusetts. So we all know about the Bermuda Triangle, and if you know about the Hockomock Forest Bermuda Triangle, you may know people go missing in these locations. Well, like Hockomock and Bermuda, there is another triangle of mystery events in southeastern Massachusetts called Bridgewater Triangle. It was given this name by paranormal researcher Lauren Coldman. in his 1983 book, Mysterious America. The Bridgewater Triangle has 200 miles where it touches over 17 towns, with the towns Abington, Freetown, and Rehoboth serving as its tips. This bizarre trove is all over the place. You got UFO sightings, unnatural animal sightings, such as great dogs, insects, oh my gosh, and just crimes and a lot of crazy paranormal stuff. Number 4, Lizzie Borden's house. Fall River. So we know Lizzie Borden and the axe murder and the place it took place in, the Borden home. There's even a creepy jump rope and ring around the rosary nursery rhyme about the murders. As the case goes, in 1892, Andrew Borden, Lizzie's father, and Abby Borden, Lizzie's stepmother, were axed to death in the home. Lizzie was the prime suspect but was acquitted of the double murder because, main point, she was a woman and apparently back then people believed, with the jury being all male, didn't believe women can kill. The murder remains unsolved all these years later despite everyone believing Lizzie is the killer. And that is where the house comes in, as it's now a bed and breakfast, which has reports of ghost activities of the Borden family who haunt the house. And if you see the Ghost Adventures episode, and I don't know if other ghost related stuff mentioned this, but a mother who has some connection to the Borden family had a mental breakdown and killed some of her kids in a well that used to be on the property before killing herself. She and her children are also said to haunt the house, along with Lizzie herself. Number 5, Hockomock Swamp, West Bridgewater. Now back to scary places in nature, there's a haunted swamp in the northern part of southeastern Massachusetts. It gets its name from the Algonquin word meaning place where spirits dwell. Now, with a name like that, it's bound to have the spirits it says claims by the Native Americans who lived in the area at that time. They believed that the swamp was a magical place, which obviously freaked out Puritans since they were very religious at the time and named Hockomock Swamp the Devil's Swamp or the Devil's Bowl, as the site is an old burial ground, so no kidding if the spirits are gonna be pissed off. Speaking of the folklore of the area, there are said to be creatures called Pukwajees from Wampanoag legend, whose names mean Little Wild Man of the Wood that vanish. Pukwajees are said to live there, and they make fire, cast spells, and disappear when they feel like it. They also like to push people off cliffs, attack people with spears, and blind their victims with pocket sand. So be sure if you're in the area, watch out for these spirits. Number 6, Spidergate Cemetery, Leicester. Quaker Cemetery or Friends Cemetery, also known as Spidergate Cemetery due to the black metal patterns on its 1890 era gates, which are supposed to be sun rays, but they look more like spider webs and spiders in appearance. The cemetery itself was found back in 1740. A legend of this cemetery is that you can find the 8th gate to hell here. As the legend goes, there are supposed to be 7 other gates, but as you may know, going there is none. If you enter the spider gates, you'll be plunged into hell. Other highlights to talk about the location in the cemetery called the Altar, which is a barren patch of land that said that cult rituals happened there. There is also a grave to a person known as Marmaduke Earl, and if you say, "Marmaduke, speak to me," and circle around the tombstone 10 times, he will come out of his grave. Number 7. The locations of Bathsheba Spooner, Worcester, and Brookfield. Okay, so there are 3 of locations in this part of the list, but they are connected to one person, which is why I'm squishing these 3 locations into number 7. And they are connected to my hometown of Worcester. because I need a location from my hometown to put into this scary list because it never gets talked about and Salem takes up a lot of spots when it comes to scary places in Massachusetts, but we will get to Salem later, don't worry. Although I can't confirm if these places are haunted, but there is a possibility they could be. But they are also still scary in their own right. That's because the person in said these locations are connected to is a person known as Bathsheba Spooner, who is known for being the first woman to be executed in the United States following Declaration of Independence being created and signed, you know the whole thing. Bathsheba Spooner was a woman from the 18th century, during American Revolution times, and she had an arranged marriage with a wealthy farmer named Joshua Spooner. It may be obvious her marriage was not really happy, and she had an affair with a continental soldier named Urza Ross, who I should probably tell you, he was 17 and she was in her 30s when this happened. Yeah, 18th century didn't give a care about age. I think we should all know that. But, you know, saying that to those who didn't know, that this was normal in that day, and let's get back. Bathsheba then became pregnant with his child. She then had Urza and 2 British soldiers to kill her husband, Joshua, so he wouldn't find out about the affair. And then they dumped him in his own well. This is location number 1, which is now known as the Spooner Well, and it's located in Brookfield, Massachusetts. Although not in Worcester, it is one of the locations connected to Bathsheba. And to connect Bathsheba and the man who participated in this murder and to my hometown of Worcester, Bathsheba and the Dream Men were hanged in Washington Square for the crime. And sources confirmed Bathsheba was also killed while still pregnant. Her body was claimed by her sister and it was buried in an unmarked grave on the Green Estate, which is now Green Hill Park. With all these locations mentioned, maybe they just could be haunted by Bathsheba Spooner's ghost, her husband's ghost, and those who took part in the crime. Who knows? But with that background, it might make you think twice when looking back on these locations when visiting them. It certainly has made me do the same. Number 8, Hoosac Tunnel, North Adams. An old railroad tunnel called Hoosac Tunnel, also called Hoosac Tunnel, is a tunnel which runs in North Adams and can go to Florida, Massachusetts. Just to let you know if you didn't know, there are towns named after states that exist. This is one of them. Well, this tunnel is also called Bloody Pit. It gets this creepy name for the 200 men who died around 1851 and 1875 when the tunnel was under construction. It wouldn't be surprising if the workers of the tunnel haunt the site to this day. One incident that happened at the tunnel, which is the most disturbing, when a 1,000-foot canal asphalt shaft exploded, destroying a hose that was used to lower men and equipment down the tunnel. Miners at the top tried to rescue those who were trapped below, but it started to get difficult and they unfortunately had to give up, believing all had perished in the rubble. However, months later, a makeshift raft was discovered when the only evidence that there were people who survived but are now long gone themselves, spending their final moments entombed in the ground of the tunnel. Now that's a horrible way to go. Number 9, House of the Seven Gables, Salem. Now, when it comes to Massachusetts, one of the biggest places for scary happenings is obviously Salem, Massachusetts, where the Salem witch trials took place. And because of not only it's a stable place of pop culture, especially in the Halloween season, it's now a haven for witches and stuff, or people who claim to be witches. It's but up to you to really believe that. Because of the trials, a lot of darkness is all around the place, and there are a lot of locations in the now city that are considered and known as being haunted, and it's best to only pick one for this, so I went with the most well-known, which is the House of Seven Gables. It's regularly known as the Eternal House or Eternal Insulation mansion and gets the Seven Gables name from Nathaniel Hawthorne's 1851 novel, and ghostly figures have been seen in windows and around the house. Number 10. Jenny Lind Tower, North Truro. Although the tower is now in North Truro, Cape Cod, the peninsula in Massachusetts, it used to be in Boston and gets its name from a famous opera singer named Jenny Lind, who, by a rumor, had climbed up a tower during a riot of angry people who couldn't see her perform on stage in 1850. When she climbed up the tower, she started to sing to the crowd so they would be able to hear her sing. Which, talk about looking after your fan base, I guess. But the tower was moved in 1927 and named after her for that rumored story. It's said the area around the tower is haunted by a banshee, whose screams are heard at sunset, but it also says that the spirit of Lind haunts the tower and continues to sing, which calms down the banshee and drives it away. During the list, I did find some locations that at least deserve a mention, so here are the honorable mentions for scary places in Massachusetts. Though for Massachusetts, now there might not be a well-known haunted house and stuff, but there is said to be a monster known as the Dover Demon. Back in April 1977, a local teenager named Bill Bartlett saw a strange alien-like creature on Farm Street, and he wasn't the only one who saw it. Even though there are no sightings of the Dover Demon in the modern day, it is one of the most scariest creatures that appears in a location, which is the Dover and the Farm Street area. Route 44, which runs 237 miles across 4 states, has a reputation for supernatural activity. Late in the night, a hitchhiker shocks of red hair and dark eyes dressed in a lumberjack known as the Redhead Spectre. He's like a prankster. If you stop for him, he'll vanish once the car reaches him, and he then shows up in the rearview mirror. Other people have said the red-headed spectre messes with their radio, making deep crackle bursts from the car speakers. Either way, the Redhead Spectre is either an annoying menace or one to give you the goosebumps of unwanted spookiness. Houghton Mansion, also another place in North Adams after a tragic car accident. Misery started to happen to the Houghton family, who were a prominent 20th century family in northwestern Massachusetts. The car crash happened in 1914, and the daughter of the family, Mary, was killed in it, and the driver of the car was cleared of any wrongdoings of the incident. It's said that the mansion is haunted, and it's probably haunted by Mary's ghost, or just her ghost being one of them. Freetown Falls State Forest is a forest which is part of the Bridgewater Triangle. There have been real-life killings that have happened at the state forest, like the 1978 murder of a random teen, a 1987 slaying, and a shooting in 2001 that resulted in 2 deaths. And crazy enough, in 2016, some person set up a wire across some heavy traffic trails in what seemed to be an attempt to slice off the heads of motorbike riders. What the actual fuck? Oh yeah, and there's a satanic cult in the area too. I saw that Exploring with Josh went here, so if you want to learn more about the Bridgewater Triangle and this forest, check out his video. I recommend it. And one more honorable mention in my hometown of Worcester. It's a beautiful site with a mystery that's very interesting. Also, I found out the location is not far where I live. Oh man. But this place is known as Deed Rock, which has a border there, and carved into it is a 200-word legal document in dedication to God, which has sat there for over 150 years now. Now you may be wondering, who would write a 200-word legal document dedication for God on a rock in this wooden area, and that being like the other thing that there are houses and apartments in the area, Well, as the story goes, a man named Solomon Parsons Jr. back in 1840 bought this plot of land for $125 in the hills of Worcester. Solomon was a religious grandson of a reverend, and he was basically one of those people preparing for when the world was gonna end, which in his case was 1844. He planned to use this area to help survive the end times. No houses and buildings were built on the land except nowadays for buildings that surround the area which Solomon had dedicated to God. Owning this land, he died at 93. There is a whole website that talks about the place, and I definitely recommend if you want to research more about this place. Now you may think this isn't scary at all, but maybe this will change your mind. And please thank my father for remembering this detail and telling me about it. But back in 2015, the body of a woman was found burned in her car on Swan Ave, where Deed Rock is. Now, the case has been solved, but it's still scary because of a murder happening there. But if you want to know more about the case in detail, I'll link an article about it. Also, actually this was supposed to be number 7, but I decided to change it as I remembered about the case of Bathsheba, which also makes me surprised that not many people know about it unless they look it up or get told about it, like me. But now you do, and also Deed Rock. And that will be my top 10 list for Massachusetts. I hope you liked it, and what I like to do with this series is that I'll put a poll in my community tab when this video goes up, and select some location in which you would then vote for them. The one with the most votes will be added to the Massachusetts spot for a mega list on scary places around the United States. So be sure to look into that. I'll see you next time with my next list. I still got more state locations to look at, and next we have Maryland. So see you then.